Now let us finish up the chapter by looking at the end of chapter questions. We basically have 4 questions, and the questions read: the secrecy is required of all officers performing duties under the Taxation Act. The first one is saying, what is the preliminary step that officers must take before taking an office under the Act? When is the duty to maintain secrecy waived? What are the penalties and fines for breach of duty to observe secrecy? Why is the commissioner vested in the discretionary power? So just to sort of make it into context, right? It's not really part of the question, but if they said what is the rule of secrecy or what is secrecy, right? Best definition could be is a rule that requires every officer to keep information required in the course of duty confidential. So every information acquired in the course of duty should be kept confidential. That's secrecy rule or secrecy. So the first question, what is the preliminary step that the officer must take before taking an office under the Act? So the first step is just basically make sure to take an oath of secrecy before taking an office under the Act. So basically that's it. So you have to make sure that you vow or you take an oath of secrecy before taking in any office under the Act. Saying when is the duty to maintain secrecy waived? In other words, what are the exception of the secrecy rule? So the exception or when it is waived is basically when information is required by the taxpayer or his agent, right? But the taxpayer, right? So when the information is required by a taxpayer, it is waived. That's the first one. When info is required by the auditor general in his course of duty. So where the auditor general requires the information in his course of duty, he is permitted, right? Right. If info is required by an authorized government official from another country where Malawi has a double tax agreement with, right? Agreement with for the purpose of assessing the taxpayers' tax position. So we're saying where the information is required by an authorized government official from another country where Malawi has a double tax agreement with for the purpose of assessing the taxpayer's tax position, then it is also waived, right? It is also waived. So basically that's it. We have 3, right? Another one is basically info required by the court, right? For the purpose of persecuting an offense related to tax matters. So if the offense is related to tax matters, then you are allowed to waive the secrecy rule. So we have, if information is required by taxpayer, if the information is required by Auditor General in the course of his work, if the information is required by an authorized government official from another country where Malawi has a double tax agreement with for the purpose of assessing taxpayers' tax position, and if information is required by the court for the purpose of prosecuting an offense related to tax matters, and lastly, when the commissioner wishes to compile and publish statistics of the amount of income received. So if the information is being required by the commissioner to compile and publish statistics of the amount of money received, then it can also be waived. So basically that's it. Going to number 3, what are the penalties and fines for breaching the duty to observe secrecy? So there are 2 penalties. The first penalty is to do with the offense of what? Not taking an oath. So where an officer takes on an office before taking an oath of secrecy, right? An oath of secrecy, then he is liable to a fine of 20 kwacha. That's the first penalty and its corresponding offense, right? And the second offense is basically when an officer discloses, right, confidential information after taking the oath of secrecy, right? After taking the oath of secrecy, then he is liable to a fine of 1,000 kwacha plus 2 years imprisonment. So those are the 2 penalties. The first one is to do with the taking up an office before taking the oath of secrecy, and you are liable to paying 20 kwacha. And if you take on the oath of secrecy and you basically disclose the information, then you are liable to 1,000 kwacha and 2 years imprisonment. So those are the 2 Those are the two offenses and the corresponding fines and penalties. And lastly, the question is why the commissioner is vested with discretionary powers. I told you that discretionary power is basically the power that he can make decision or judgment, right? Right. So, the best answer, though we have not looked at it, right? Why this is done is basically because that the administration, right? The administration of the act, right? The administration of the act, right, which is the Taxation Act, demands constant use of what? Constant use of common sense. Right? It's not exact. For the fact that it's not exact, it means that we are supposed to use common sense or judgment. So for that reason, that's why the Commissioner General is given this discretionary power. Discretionary power, right? Because a lot of stuff in the act, right, demands common sense or judgment, in other words. So that's why he's given what? Discretionary power. So basically that's it, and this is the end of the chapter. Next, we'll go to chapter 3. Thank you.